Seattle Storm versus the Minnesota Lynx on ESPN2 at 7 p.m. Eastern. What's up, ladies? We got two top teams battling today. How are we doing?
You talk about getting hot. I feel like the whole league is having serious climate change because I've been at 3 games this week and the intensity in the arena, it's like somebody took the heat and went, so it's hot.
I think that's part of it. We got all these fans back raising the temperature for everybody. A lot of fun.
I love it. We love to see that kind of raise of intensity. And since it is getting hot around the league, let's start off the show by looking at news coming in from around the league. First, the reigning champions, the Seattle Storm, visit the White House to celebrate their 2020 WNBA championship. No WNBA team has visited the White House during the last presidency, so this will be a grand return and celebration. Holly, how much does this invitation to the White House mean?
Well, I think it's very significant for a couple of reasons. Number one, as you mentioned, no WNBA team has been back to the White House since 2015 under the Barack Obama administration. And as far as we know, there was no invitation extended to women's teams during the previous administration. Kim Mulkey did take her Baylor national championship team to the White House, but I was told from people behind the scenes it's because she threw a fit to get them there. So I think it's significant we have a president and particularly the first lady, Dr. Jill Biden, who value women's sports. And she was at the Olympics. She was there at Team USA Games supporting these women. And I think it's significant, number one, that they were invited, but number two, that they accepted. And I mean, think about this. Breanna Stewart, I think this might be her 5th trip to the White House. I think she went 4 times with UConn. So she probably ought to just get a room in the Lincoln bedroom there. They ought to just have that be the Stewie suite. But, you know, it's significant that the women have accepted the invitation and are going. I just think it's huge.
Yeah, I remember Barack Obama joked with Maya Moore that she should have a wing at the White House for all the excellence she was happening. So heard that one before. But Holly, you've been around a lot of greatness. You had the honor to attend the WNBA Hall of Fame inductee ceremony where the late David Stern, Tamika Catchings, Lauren Jackson, Swin Cash are just to name a few of some of the inductees. Holly, there's so much excellence being celebrated. What was it like to be there in person?
It was really cool. And, it was the first time I've ever attended that event. And I would really say this, we've got to get behind the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, and we have got to celebrate our history more collectively. It was a little bit of an older crowd, and I was like, where are all the youngins at? Like, we need people who are here supporting these WNBA players going in. One really cool speech, David Stern's son was the honoree, and he spoke on his father's behalf. And it was really powerful because he was like, my dad got pushback. There was a time when the WNBA was not going to become a reality because business people, team owners, team presidents, there was some pushback. But David Stern said, no, we're doing this. It's the right thing to do. And so we really thank him. We wouldn't be here today without him. That was really cool to hear his son say that. And then, of course, Tamika Catchings was priceless. Swin Cash was amazing. Lauren Jackson could not be there because of the travel restrictions from Australia and COVID-19. But Lynn Dunn gave her speech, and Lynn did it right. So it was just an honor. But I left there thinking, like, I got to come back here every year. I'm going to invest in this. We've got to celebrate our history.
Well, I think that's... Holly, I know you are so invested as well. And may David Stern rest in peace. We absolutely are very thankful for all of his contributions and vision for the WNBA as it's executed now. And we're in year 25 as we celebrate that. Our squad is actually very lucky to have a Hall of Famer of our own with Rebecca Lobo. So as someone who's actually been on the stage, like, what does this mean to the players, Rebecca?
Well, first I want to touch on something Holly said, because I think it's really important. That's what struck me more than anything. I was inducted in 2010 to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, and going to the museum and seeing the rich history of the women's game being celebrated is so important. They had a whole exhibit dedicated to the All-American Redheads, the women who were barnstorming the U.S. Playing basketball way back in the day. And it's just such a great collection in history that is on display there. And we certainly need to support it. And, like when you have these type of honors that start to come, it's a point in your life where you sort of take inventory of the people who helped you get there and the people in your career who helped make things so meaningful. And what was particularly powerful and meaningful to me, I was pregnant at the time of the induction, but both of my parents were able to be there. And my mother actually passed away the year later. So she was not alive when I got inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame. And so the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame has a really special part in my heart, because I got to celebrate it with the woman, who had such a big part in helping me get there. But for people who have a chance to visit Knoxville, go to the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame. It brings tears to your eyes, certainly.
Oh my gosh. Are you just going to be super low key? Like, well, when I was in this Hall of Fame and this Hall of Fame, like how many Hall of Fames are you in, Rebecca? You're like super low key about it, but I'm like, oh my God, it's amazing.
But the bigger point really is that like that one is super special because like the most important people, my husband was there, my parents were there, my youngest child was in my belly. None of my other kids made the trip, but it was just a really, really cool weekend.
Absolutely. We love the family aspect of it, but I'm with you, Holly. If you aren't going to sing the praises, we're going to sing them for you. Multiple time Hall of Famer, Rebecca Lobo. So actually, let's shift to more big news coming out of the WNBA, future Hall of Famer in Elena Delle Donne. She's back. It's official. She made her return to the court after 22 months, 2 back surgeries. She laced them up for Washington versus Seattle. Now, while the Mystics did lose to the Storm, EDD looked good. I thought she had an especially convincing second half of play. She put up 16 points. Rebecca, how significant is it for Elena Delle Donne to be back for Washington?
It's huge. It's huge. It changes kind of the trajectory of what we think they can do at the end of this part of the season. And what was interesting to me was watching her play, because she had 14 of her 16 in the second half. She looked good on her fadeaway shot. She looked good when she had space. She was still reluctant to be physical and mix it up. Like you saw her slip screens more than you saw her set screens. Of course, that's to be expected, but she's out there probably not close to 100% and still able to score 16 points against one of the better defensive teams in the WNBA. So, as we see how she feels recovering from that game and how she feels going forward, of course, a player of her caliber makes Washington a team that can be dangerous come playoff time. I mean, Holly and I, you saw it firsthand in the 2019 WNBA Finals in Game 3 when she was out on the court after suffering her back injury. But she was impactful just as a spacer. You still have to guard her when she's out there, even if her mobility is affected. So it was huge for WNBA fans to see her out there. It was huge for the Mystics to see her out there. Although to me, she did not look quite 100%, but hopefully she's on the way there.
Well, I was sitting courtside, and when she would check in, she would be literally right in front of me. And I'm only going to challenge you on one thing, because in person, I did think she was pretty physical. She absorbed some physicality. She had kind of a back-to-back collision with Katie Lou Samuelson. And I could see Elena's face like, oh, am I okay? I'm okay. I'm okay. So I thought she did pretty well as far as, trying to get in there and mix it up a little bit. I did talk to her after the game, and she said, I was so nervous for this. Like I used to be on the first day of school, and I told my family, like, listen, everybody back off. Don't expect too much, because I'm really nervous. She looked good. I think she was relieved with how she played. Her first shot that went in, I mean, she kind of does a couple of moves, spin, and then a little shimmy, gets a nice shot. And she's like, when that went in, I really felt good about things. Here's what happens. She's very honest. Being back is not being back. She has some nerve pain that radiates, that comes and goes. And this is probably going to be an issue for the rest of her career. And so, like, we want to say she's back. I could foresee where she plays in a game, then doesn't play in a game, plays in a game. And this is all going to depend on her nerve situation. Back surgeries are tricky. She had 2, some complications. So I think it's going to be really interesting. But I'll tell you this, the place was live. It was so loud, and there was energy. Like, people were so excited to have her back. And I think that trickled over to her teammates as well.
So Holly, I'm just going to call you out because you've got a couple of flexes you put on us, just like Rebecca Lobo and all her Hall of Fame. So you were courtside for EDD. You've got the White House visit with the Storm. You did the Hall of Fame induction. Anything big in basketball, you're there, basically. Is that what?
Yes, and I'm not as modest as Rebecca, so I'll say I'm really proud of myself. I've been flying all over the country. I've had 3 games, so I'm just like a basketball junkie heaven right now.
All right, I got to ask this basketball junkie then. EDD's back, but Washington, they lost 4 in a row. They're 2 games back right now from the 8th place seed for playoff contention. It's currently held by the LA Sparks, which the drama of it all, the Sparks and the Mystics play each other tonight. Overall, how do you think Washington's playoff push looks so far?
Okay, so here's what I think. Natasha Cloud is playing really well. You know, she was kind of in and out at the start of the season, working her way back after sitting out last year. OMG. Natasha looks great. She is fast. She's physical. Her pace, like she's such a physical big guard. And I just was like, oh my gosh, Natasha's back and I love it. But I did an interview in game with Tina Charles in our last game. And she said, we are not a disciplined team defensively. And as well as they're doing offensively right now, they can score in fits and batches. I just made that up. I don't even know what I just said there. Fits and batches. What are you supposed to say that?
It's a thing.
Anyway, they can score. Tina was kind of like irritated by their defensive discipline. That's what I think they have to get straightened out. And Tina was very clear about it. Like we've got to be more disciplined.
Rebecca?
Well, I think one of the big things as we're looking at the playoff positioning for some of these teams is the remaining schedule. And for Washington, they have 10 games remaining. 5 of those are against teams in the bottom half of the standings. So for them, that's really good. You know, and in the game against LA tonight is really important. And I think when you also look at their schedule, LA has 9 games left, and only 4 of those are against the bottom half of teams in the WNBA standings. They play against Washington, then they go up and have to play 2 games at Connecticut, a team who is 10-1 on their home court. So it's really important when you look at these teams and try to project, you know, where things are going to level out when it comes to those standings. What does their schedule look like? You know, are they on the road? Are they home? Because that's going to play a really big piece as all these, you know, pieces fall into place.
Hey, Ros, I want to ask you this, though, because you are so locked in. You know, you're the voice of the LA Sparks. And we were all waiting for NECA to get back. We were waiting for Kristi Tolliver to get back. And they've been great and helped that team win games. But Shanae's back. I didn't get a chance to see how she looked. Just tell us, like, what can her return add to this team and how do they look?
Well, first of all, the LA Sparks are coming into this on a 4-game win streak coming out of the Olympic break. They've absolutely made the most, you know, of the schedule you mentioned, Rebecca. And Shanae comes back against the Liberty. She only played 9 minutes. It's not a lot of time. You know, what Coach Fisher has said about Shanae Ogwumike is they really are not just thinking short-term, but long-term. You know, they want to be on. Sure, Shanae, they probably could have gotten her in earlier, but they more just want to make sure they don't deal with these issues later on in the season or in seasons to come. They're really being protective of her body. What does Shanae bring to the table that you know you can count on? She goes hard. She defends. She crashes the glass. And she's an extra body inside. Also can play high-low. There was a nice little Ogwumike to Ogwumike moment in the game, which is like every broadcaster's dream. Sister, you love to point that out. But you know, I think that's what Shanae can bring to the table. A lot more of the responsibility is going to be on the return and so successful so far of Nneka Ogwumike, of Kristi Tolliver in the first half of that season, which you might say for the Sparks wasn't dominant, right? They finished on a 6-game losing streak heading into the Olympic break. They're now on a 4-game winning streak, and they created an identity around defense and being gritty and being next woman up mentality because they had to. If the Sparks are going to make the playoffs, which they're on track to now again, they have to be better on offense. And right now, they're getting added productivity and leadership from Kristi Tolliver, spacing, leadership, floor generalship. And then Nneka Ogwumike has come up with just effort, hustle. She's filling the stat sheet, and they've both come up with huge clutch shots. So I'm optimistic. I'm bullish right now on the Sparks push for the playoffs. One of the things that's also making the Sparks have a chance at this playoff push from kind of having to work their way back up from having dug that hole is Brittany Sykes has become this like dependable offensive option for them. We knew her as a defensive stopper, but now she's like consistently coming through with some great offensive production and just being really active and confident and seeking and looking for her shot. So, between her and Erica Wheeler, they figured out a lot of things in this Olympic break, and hopefully they can keep it up. Oh, that's my bias coming through. I'm with the Sparks right now.
You gotta represent. Come on now.
That's my squad. Okay, ladies, because we could sit here and talk about the Sparks all day, who are making this push. But as we look at the standings, it's actually shaping up to be quite a battle right at the bottom there of those top 8 at the 6 to 8 spots. How do you see this unfolding into the second half of the season?
Well, I think that's the excitement of it all. We've seen this interesting thing happen this year where you have 3 separate, the cream has risen to the top. And then we have, a little chunk in the middle. And then we have all those teams at the bottom who are going to be slugging it out with one another. Again, I think it comes down in a lot of ways to schedule and staying healthy. I mean, Chicago was looking really good. Then Candace Parker rolls her ankle. Her availability is uncertain. That is going to have a huge impact on the Chicago Sky. So we've seen that every year in the WNBA. Health is so important because of the condensed schedule. It's going to continue to be important this last stretch of 9, 10, 11 games for these teams, their schedule and how difficult that is. But it's going to be really interesting to watch these teams slug it out, all for a chance to play in a single elimination game against a team that's much higher than them in this standing. So, whether you love it or not, it certainly is a really exciting way to do playoffs in the WNBA.
It's time for the most searched presented by Google. Search is asking, when do the WNBA playoffs start? Spiked 1,000% in the US, which shows that fans are just as excited as us as when this playoff push starts. Guys, we've spoken about that battle at the bottom half of the top 8. Now let's shift our focus to that very top of the standings, which includes both the Storm and the Lynx. Rebecca, when you look at this top 4, do you think that tonight's matchup could make or break the Lynx?
I don't think it can make or break them. Of course, it could be helpful to them, launching and propelling themselves as they gear up for this last bit of the season. To me, if I'm a Lynx fan, I'm a little bit more concerned about the teams that are below me in the standings than I am about the teams that are above me in the standings. I think number 1 for Minnesota is to keep that 4th playoff spot. It is so important so that you only have 1 single elimination playoff game versus 2 single elimination playoff games. And the team that you are most concerned, I think, below you is Phoenix. Phoenix has been playing great. They've won 4 in a row. They're healthy right now. They're clicking. That is a team that is really close to Minnesota, who could overtake them for that 4th playoff spot and then push Minnesota into a position where they might have to have 2 single elimination games. So yeah, if I'm Minnesota, I'm a little less concerned about the top 3 and a little bit more concerned about Phoenix nipping at my heels.
The top 3 teams are neck and neck battling it out. It's between the Aces, the Storm, and the Sun. So, who could you predict getting bounced out first of that top 2 and missing out potentially on that double round bye?
Well, one thing that I'm a little concerned about right now, and listen, I feel even weird saying it out loud, but the Seattle Storm tend to go how Sue Bird goes. She just runs that team. They just operate differently when Sue Bird is on the floor. And even though Jordan Canada has become a great backup, the team is more efficient with Sue Bird right now. And, I just saw Sue in person. I think we're taking for granted the schedule and the stretch that she's playing. There was a moment I looked at Sue's face. I'm like, this is hard. This is a 40-year-old woman out here playing in the Olympics, coming right back, playing. And I just think that they've got to be smart about Sue Bird's health and her rest through the end of this season. And so if they have to drop in the standings to rest Sue Bird for the playoffs, that may be a decision they have to make. But to me, it depends on the health of this team for Seattle.
Now, they did rest Sue Bird and Stewie after the Commissioner's Cup for 2 games there, but they are back playing. Is that too soon? I know, Rebecca, you had mentioned you thought, hey, listen to the players. If they need to rest their bodies, do that. But are you surprised to see them back on the court so much now? What are your thoughts on how they should be played?
I think they should be playing however they say they should be playing. Sue Bird and Brianna Stewart know themselves so well. So I'm sure they have great line of communication with Noelle Quinn, not only with whether they need to rest games or within a game, when is the right time to have them in. I'm going to turn it a little bit because tonight there's a really, really important game when you talk about the top 3 teams in the standings, and that is Vegas is playing at Connecticut. Again, Connecticut is 10-1 at home on the season. Connecticut already has the tiebreaker in that series, winning their previous 2 games against Vegas. So that's another thing to keep an eye on with these top 3 teams, is the tiebreaker. Connecticut has the tiebreaker on Vegas. Vegas has the tiebreaker already on Seattle. Seattle has the tiebreaker on Connecticut. So this is going to be a fun shell game in a way too, as we try to figure things out. But back to Seattle. Sue Bird is still drinking from the fountain of youth. And I think part of the reason, not only is the way she takes care of her body, but her ability to communicate with her coaches, her ability to know exactly when she needs to rest. We saw it a season ago in the bubble where there are a number of games she knew she needed to rest so she could be ready for playoffs. That's what really matters. Even if they end up having a single elimination game, that's fine with this group. As long as they're healthy and feeling well, you don't want to play them if you're anybody else in a single elimination.
Are we just going to skip over the drama of Liv Cambage at Connecticut Sun? Do we not remember the tiff with her and Kurt Miller? I know they kissed and made up a little bit, but I don't know. There might be some fun drama there.
There might be.
I see. Oh, you like the drama too. Okay, I'm seeing this now.
I like it. I like it.
Okay, well, guys, the Aces in the Storm, they were in the WNBA finals last season. We knew they were going to be good again. How impressive has the performance of the Lynx and the Sun been this season as they've been building?
It's been incredibly impressive to me. I didn't see it. I certainly didn't see it with Connecticut. I didn't see them being a team that was going to be contending for a championship this year. Alyssa Thomas, so important to what they do. And once we found out that she was going to be out this year because of her Achilles tear, to me, that changed things. And then Jonquel Jones came in and had this monster season. I did not see this at all from the Connecticut Sun. And I also didn't see it from the Minnesota Lynx, especially at the beginning of the season. They start the season 0-4, and they're struggling a little bit. And what turned things around for them was when they were able to bring in Lasia Clarendon. They have been phenomenal, leading the point guard position for the Minnesota Lynx. When she's able to get into the lane, get paint touches, get to the rim, pass out to teammates, it's been a completely different Minnesota Lynx team. So to me, that was the turning point of the season.
Yeah, they have had so many injuries. You really have to give Cheryl Reeve a lot of credit. She had to be like GM with checkers and chess to find out how they could sign players on short-term deals and get money. I mean, it's been a really complicated season from a GM perspective, and then also putting all those pieces together on the floor for Minnesota. So really good job by Cheryl Reeve putting those pieces together. And now those pieces are kind of taking off, getting some chemistry, and they are able to ascend. But the Connecticut Sun, we had a little birdie tell us that Alyssa Thomas is way ahead of schedule. I mean, the longer the Sun go, what if she was able to come back for part of the playoffs? That would be very interesting. They're playing great without her, but that just might be one more thing to keep your eye on with the Connecticut Sun.
Absolutely something to keep an eye on there as well. And for the Lynx, you talk about the job Cheryl Reeve has done. She was recognized with that Coach of the Year last year, perhaps Executive of the Year, but coming up too. But all right, so that's enough about that. That would lead us to tonight's matchup. Storm, Lynx facing off. Now, there's a lot at stake for both teams, but who has more pressure on them to get the win? Rebecca?
I don't know if either team sees themselves necessarily as having pressure. I think a home team generally is the one who feels like they want to protect their home court, even more so now than early in the season, because now when you have unlimited fans, those fans are there, they're ready, they want to explode, they want to cheer. We talked about Minnesota trying to keep that 4th playoff spot. So I think there's a lot riding on this game for both of these teams. Seattle trying to stay in the mix in the top 3, Minnesota trying to hang on to that 4th spot. So there's a lot. And you're also in the stretch run of the season where you want to be playing your best basketball. Minnesota, you had won 8 in a row, came to Connecticut, dropped 2 there before getting a win in Chicago. So they're trying to keep their momentum going. Similar story for Seattle, loses a couple in Chicago and New York before Sue and Stewie return, now get some wins. They too want to keep the momentum going. So certainly really important for both of these teams.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to point out about Seattle is their bench has gotten really cohesive and productive. I did their game earlier in the week against the Washington Mystics, and the bench was the deal. I mean, Ezi Magbagor came in and had one of her best games of the season. She is growing each and every game. I have no doubt she is going to be a superstar in this league at some point. They are really getting some good productivity from there. And, you know, honestly, in that game, the big three struggled. At the half, they were 6 for 20, and it was the bench that had come in and really picked them up. So I think the Seattle bench is making some great strides, and that makes it difficult for a team like Minnesota that's had some depth issues due to injury this season.
Okay, Holly, so you're pointing to the Storm bench to be something that makes a big impact on this game. When you look on the other side, Minnesota Lynx got a squad too, and they're getting the most out of their players. In their last game, they beat the Chicago Sky. 6 players scored in double figures. So clearly they got a number of options that are ready. Who needs to step up for Minnesota for them to get the win tonight, not just against the reigning champions, but also the 2021 Commissioner Cup champions as well? They're just stacking up that hardware. Holly?
I think Sylvia Fowles. You know, I think that sometimes the Seattle Storm can struggle with big post players. You know, Mercedes Russell has done a great job, but if she gets into foul trouble, I think sometimes they've had issues against Brittany Griner, some of the other bigs in the league. So I think Sylvia Fowles needs to go to work. She needs to get fouls called for her. She needs to put some pressure on Seattle in the post. And I just think that she's a piece that is difficult to deal with.
And for Minnesota, when they've had success this year, they've gotten paint touches and they've dominated in the paint. And that's Sylvia Fowles, that's Nafisa Collier, that can be Damiris Dantas as well. So it's going to be really important for those 3 players to get involved. But it's also important for Claren to get feet in the paint as well, because when they get inside and can either score and draw fouls or kick out to perimeter players, Minnesota is a really difficult team to defend. I had the opportunity to call Minnesota's 2 games when they were in Connecticut. And a player that Cheryl Reeve pointed out was Damiris Dantas as well. She said, when Damiris plays really well, we are hard to beat. In those games against Connecticut, Damiris struggled a little bit, but when she is that added force on the offensive end, not only scoring inside, but facing up, stretching the defense, it makes things a big challenge for the opponent. And it'll be fun to keep an eye on Aerial Powers as well. She finally returned from that hand injury, came back and played against Chicago, scored in double figures. She's a different player than Minnesota really has anywhere else on their roster. A big, strong physical guard who can dribble, penetrate, who can create her own shot. She could be really important to Minnesota in this home stretch as well.
It might seem obvious, but one player, you know, we didn't necessarily talk a ton about is Nafisa Collier. I mean, how big and high is the ceiling for this young, blossoming star player and Olympian?
She's a superstar. I mean, she's already, in my mind, a superstar in this league. We should never talk about Minnesota and not mention her. She is that caliber of player. And she has a tough defensive assignment, though. You know, I think oftentimes she will start on Stewie. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Rebecca, but sometimes Damiris does, sometimes Nafisa does. Stewie's a handful to handle for Minnesota at times, but Nafisa, bright shining star, and she's consistent, one of the most consistent new players in this league.
And an underrated defender for sure. She is vitally important. And I completely agree with you, Holly, in terms of being one of the next, if not now, superstars. What she struggled a bit in their meetings against Connecticut. The first matchup, she only scored 6 points. The Minnesota Lynx only scored 60 points in that game. And a big part of that was Nafisa's struggles on the offensive end. It is huge for Minnesota, for them to get her back to being her consistent self. I asked Cheryl Reeve, how Nafisa felt after the Olympics, where, she didn't probably play as much as she wanted to. And Cheryl laughed and said, well, she's well rested. We know that. So, look for Nafisa to find her footing again and to be very impactful for the Minnesota Lynx in this stretch run.
And all of that anchored around the stalwart in Sylvia Fowles. All right, so we got a nice matchup coming up. There's a lot at stake. Let me just get your predictions and don't be afraid. Who you got? Storm or Lynx?
I don't got either one. I'm never good at these predictions. I've got neither. I don't know. I do know this. Not only I think this is going to be a phenomenal game, but I do think is going to come down to the last moments. We have a great slate of games just here tonight in the WNBA, and they're all, I think, tipping at 7 p.m. So our attention, we better be able to multitask tonight.
Holly, are you going to give a name or no?
No, because I'm covering the game and I like to be totally neutral in that regard. I will give you this little piece of information that, the Seattle Storm, the day before this game were at the White House. They didn't get into Minnesota until later in the evening, haven't really had a true practice per se. So it's been a hectic couple of days, a game in Washington, a really hard fought game, visit to the White House, and then fly that night, get to Minnesota. So let's see how Seattle can come out here. I'm not saying they won't be great, but I just know they've had a challenging schedule. We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to throw in, it is important. I've been talking about this the whole show, but it is important to look at schedule. This is Seattle's 5th game on the road on their 5-game road trip. This is Minnesota getting back home after being on the road for the past week as well. So certainly tough for, travel circumstances for both of these teams.
All of that to be taken into consideration. For all of you watching, hit us in the comments. Who you got winning tonight's game? Lynx? Storm? Let us know. And make sure you at Rebecca Lobo during the game and let her know how you was feeling about your prediction.
Wait, are there comments on this? Because I just need people to know I did not have a hairdresser or a hair dryer today. So if there's comments about my hair, just know I had some challenges. I don't want to hear about it.
Make sure y'all send Holly some hearts as well. Show her some love in this.
I need them.
Let her know she's looking good and representing well as she's about to crush the courtside today during the game. And actually, we want to send all that love back to you because that's a wrap, folks. Make sure you head to ESPN2 for Seattle Storm versus the Minnesota Lynx right now, 7 p.m. Eastern. This has been WNBA Hoop Streams presented by Google. I had a blast as always. I'm Ros Gold-Onwude. I'm here with the legend, Holly Rowe, the multiple-time Hall of Famer, Rebecca Lobo.
Too many to count.
Too many to count. Storm, Lynx, we'll see you there.